What is going on, everybody? I hope you're enjoying your Tuesday afternoon. This is NYG Jeffy T 3285, and I just want to go over a couple of quick trade scenarios that could happen in any type of trade involving Kevin Durant. Now, we all know that the Brooklyn Nets and Kevin Durant, it looks like that Durant is pretty much trying to force his way out of Brooklyn. And right now, as the Nets try to steadfast and say that they're not going to pretty much be trading Kevin Durant under any circumstances, there has to be a time where either Kevin Durant might have to be moved because the relationship might just be too far gone and there might be no chance of repairing what looks to be a fractured relationship between the Brooklyn Nets and Kevin Durant. So I'm just going to break down a couple of trade scenarios that could happen involving Kevin Durant and some of the destinations that he would like to go to. Starting off with a team like Philadelphia. Now, obviously we know that the Nets have no interest in trading for a guy like James Harden back over to the Nets. That's not happening. Harden's already signed an extension over there in Philadelphia. He's staying there long term. And obviously there's no way the Nets are going to be able to get a guy like Joel Embiid. He's the central part of that Philadelphia 76ers team. There's no way that the Sixers are going to trade him. He's staying there. But how about a couple of those other players on that team that could be young pieces that you could potentially get from the Nets to the Nets in exchange from the Philadelphia 76ers? A couple of players that I would target is obviously the young wing Tyrese Maxey, who obviously showed in this past playoffs that he's a guy that can be able to shoot the ball consistently and can throw up at least 20 points per game. And he would be an obvious young player that you could build around for the Brooklyn Nets going forward. As well as another young player who's not really known for his scoring, but is more known for his defensive prowess as one of the better young wing defenders in the league. And that, of course, is Maurice Thybulle. I would definitely try to acquire both these guys, as well as another young player or another core veteran player on that team right now, as well as I try to get at least 2 or 3 first-round picks from the Philadelphia 76ers, and I'd ask for nothing else if you're trying to get a guy like the 76ers are trying to get somebody like Kevin Durant. So if you can find a way to pull off and get try to get Maxey, Thybulle, another good young core player, as well as 2 or 3 first-round picks, I'd do the deal for the Philadelphia Sixers if you want to give away Kevin Durant. Now, another team, obviously, we're going to think about is the Boston Celtics. And when it comes to the Boston Celtics, when you think about any type of trade involving Kevin Durant, you have to first go right to Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown had himself a very good playoff performance this year as he helped lead the Celtics to the NBA Finals this year, even though they came up short and lost their series against the Golden State Warriors 4-2. But Jaylen Brown is another guy you could build your franchise with. And in fact, 10 years ago when the Nets had a chance to draft, about 6-7 years ago when the Nets had a chance to draft him, they obviously made the trade for a couple of veterans like Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and Jason Terry. And ironically, when they made that trade with the Boston Celtics, one of those picks they used was for a guy like Jaylen Brown. So the Nets could be able, if they really want to trade Kevin Durant over to Boston, they can get a crop of players, obviously starting around Jaylen Brown as a central piece in that trade. Another guy you try to get is Marcus Smart because of his defensive play. He's going to occasionally give you at least, 13 to 15 points, maybe give you occasionally 20-plus points a game at times. But he's mostly known for his defensive prowess out there. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to play the wing defense better than anybody out there. And another guy I would try to get in terms of a young core piece would be a guy like, Robert Williams as well. You try to get a guy like Robert Williams if you can get that. Because Robert Williams is a defensive stopper, one of the best young centers in the league, rebounds well, can score sometimes in the paint. So I definitely try to see if you can get Robert Williams. I don't think the Celtics are going to trade both Robert Williams and they're not going to trade both Robert Williams and Marcus Smart. So you could try to get one of them and maybe try to get one of the other young players on that team, like a Glenn Williams, who actually showed to be a pretty solid role player on that team going forward. So if you can get yourself maybe one of Robert Williams, Marcus Smart, obviously you can get yourself a Derek White as well. So I would try to if the Nets can try to somehow get a package of Derek White, Jaylen Brown, a first-round pick, as well as either get a Robert Williams or a Marcus Smart and at least 2 or 3 first-round picks, do it. Now, another team you could possibly make a trade with the Brooklyn Nets is, of course, the Phoenix Suns. And when you think of the Phoenix Suns, when you're going to center around a trade package for any of that, for the Phoenix Suns, you have to think DeAndre Ayton would have to be the central figure in that trade. You want to try to get yourself a young player back for Kevin Durant. So I would try to get a DeAndre Ayton, one of Cam Payne or Cam Johnson. I would try to get also a Mikal Bridges. So I would get, if you can get a DeAndre Ayton, a Mikal Bridges who's a good wing player, good on the defensive side, can occasionally get you 20 points per game, as well as a Cam Johnson or a Cam Payne, good young players on those teams, and 2 or 3 first-round picks, do it. Kevin Durant to that Phoenix team, and you get yourself some young core players to build around. Same thing ditto if you want to make a trade to the Miami Heat. And if you want to make a trade to the Miami Heat for Kevin Durant, some of the players that I would think about targeting are Duncan Robinson, a Tyler Hero. I don't think they're going to get rid of a Bam Adebayo, so I don't think that's out of the question. But you want to try to get a Duncan Robinson or a Tyler Hero mixed with a couple of other young players on there, and obviously 3 first-round picks, more than 2, because you want to try to get the most for Kevin Durant and maybe get a veteran player in there too. Maybe you could get yourself a Kyle Lowry, but I doubt they're going to be able to do that. So if you can get yourself one of those veteran players on that Miami Heat team, do it for Kevin Durant. And maybe you have a couple of pieces to build upon. But I think this trade package is a little bit less ideal because of the fact that you're not going to get a young player like Ben Adebayo, who is a center figure you can get for that team. And obviously another trade scenario you can make is the Toronto Raptors. But this is a little bit questionable because you figure if you're going to trade Kevin Durant to Toronto, the one player you want back is the reigning Rookie of the Year, Scotty Barnes. But I don't think Toronto is any way at all going to trade a guy like Scotty Barnes to the Brooklyn Nets. So I think he's going to be off the table. Toronto has already stated they are not trading Scotty Barnes under any circumstance. So then the next people you're going to look at is CJ is going to be Aboye. You're going to be looking at Aboye as well as a guy like Pascal Siakam. So you're going to look at CJ Aboye as well as Pascal Siakam and a couple of other young players, like a couple of other veteran players on that team, maybe like a Thaddeus Young, as well as a first and at least 2 first-round picks for that thing. Because Pascal Siakam, 20-point scorer, solid rebounder. Get yourself a franchise player you could bring in. Obviously, he's not Kevin Durant, but he's still a pretty solid player you could bring in. So if you can get yourself a Pascal Siakam, as well as a Oye Aboye, then you get yourself 2 young players you can build your team around. Get yourself 2 or 3 first-round picks. Get yourself another veteran like a Thaddeus Young, and away you go. So I would try to do that if it's necessary. I think the most ideal place you want to trade Kevin Durant to that you're going to get the best packages for is the Phoenix Suns and the Boston Celtics. And if you can make it happen, do it. Because you're going to get yourself some young talent, some veteran players on there, and obviously the first-round picks, which are more than ideal of anything for a trade for Kevin Durant. But when it comes down to it, if the Brooklyn Nets can keep Kevin Durant, you do it. Any means necessary. So those are a couple of trade scenarios I just want to bring up to you guys on some of the teams that the Brooklyn Nets could trade Kevin Durant to and maybe get the most ideal back for him going forward. So if you like this video, please hit the like button below. Subscribe if you haven't already to NYGJeffyT3285 for more breaking news updates and chatter surrounding the Brooklyn Nets, New York Mets, New York Giants, WWE Wrestling, as well as food for thought. Share your comments below on some of the trade packages that you've heard in this video or some of your own trade packages that you would share in the comment section for an ideal package if you want to try to trade Kevin Durant for a maximized offer coming back. And turn on the bell for notifications on the next video or short that drops surrounding the Brooklyn Nets. So I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your Tuesday afternoon. Take it easy and let's go Brooklyn Nets. It's a Nets world and all we're doing is living in it. Let's go Nets.